Hey there YouTube, and welcome to Ask a Maestro. Today's question is one of the most common questions that I get when I give pre-concert lectures. What is an opus? Opus is the Latin word for work. The plural of opus is opera, which is where the Italians got their word opera, which also means work. So the opus number that's assigned to a particular piece of music is the chronological order in which that piece was written in the composer's output. And it's not genre specific. So a composer's opus 1 might be a symphony. Opus 2 would be a choral work. Opus 3 would be a piano concerto. And this of course means that many works might have two numbers, like Symphony number 2, Opus 30, which would mean that this is the second symphony that the composer has written, but it's the 30th work overall. So when did this system come into being? I have no idea. Probably sometime during the 17th century. Handel is the first composer that I think we usually refer to their music in terms of the opus numbers. Now, even though Handel did publish some works using the opus system, Bach, for example, did not. Haydn published his works with opus numbers. Mozart did not. So the opus numbering system really connects back to this fundamental philosophical question, and it was actually the subject of my first video, which you can watch here. And that question was, how do we label a piece of art that fundamentally has no connection to words themselves? So this sounds like a good system, pairing a number, which is an abstraction, with a piece of music, which is this abstract form of art. But if I were to nominate one element to rid our program pages of, and I will, opus numbers would be the first thing to go. Reason number one to get rid of opus numbers is we already have a perfectly good naming convention with classical music pieces. You say what the genre of piece is, like piano concerto, and you tell us which one it is in the composer's output. Number 3, piano concerto number 3. Okay, fine, I know it's Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto. Usually, when we have printed programs, the program will tell us the year in which the piece was written, and the years of the composer's birth and death. So it's pretty easy to contextualize where a particular work sat in the composer's output. But let's imagine a scenario where you run into a concert, you sit down, and you're going to hear Beethoven's Opus 87, which is a trio for 2 oboes and English horn. And in this scenario, you know that Beethoven has 138 published works. And you think, well, okay, Opus 87, this must be right towards the middle of Beethoven's output. So you can sit back and listen confidently, knowing that, oh, but you would be wrong. His Opus 87 was written in 1795. It just happens that it was published in the 1810s, which is why it has a higher opus number. And in fact, opus numbers come from the world of music publishing, not from the world of the artists themselves. And this thing with, Beethoven Opus 87 was an earlier work that was published later. This is so often a lame excuse for a fact that's printed in programs. In some cases, it might be interesting. Like, for example, Beethoven's Opus 1, which was written after his Opus 3. He chose to publish number 1 first because it was a set of piano trios, and he wanted to make his mark as a composer-pianist. So there is actually a connection to Beethoven's life and his work and his kind of canny sense of his career that makes that a somewhat interesting fact. And there's all kinds of little pockets in Beethoven's work that are like this, where you have pieces published out of order. And that's just one composer. I mean, you could potentially see a reform of the opus system where, with the benefit of hindsight, we now know the order in which all of these composers' pieces were written, so now we can just start over and give them each a work number. But this is problematic because inevitably you will discover some new work by a long-dead composer that emerges through research and scholarship. So then what do? Do you move everything back a number? I just think it's a little bit of an exercise in futility to try to give a number chronologically to all of a composer's works. Opus numbers are really nothing more than trivia. And hey, I love trivia. I love classical music trivia, and I will trounce anybody who challenges me to it. Anyway, YouTube, that was my rant about opus numbers. Thank you to the literally dozens of people who asked me this question over the years. I hope that this adds to your store of knowledge. And I also hope that it makes you realize that this is just something you don't need to know. Sometimes it's an interesting quirk of musical history, but oftentimes it is a completely superfluous piece of information, and it's actually a stand-in for a much richer and more interesting understanding about the pieces of music that we're listening to. Okay, YouTube, if you love angry rants about the minutia of classical program books, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, go play an instrument or sing a song. And until then, goodbye everyone.